morning, everyone. So, like I said, that's my introduction. It's a tough act, and I can't do it on my own. And I think we've all recognised that collaboration is one of the key themes that have really came out of COVID, is ready for this crisis as well. That unprecedented collaboration will help us avert an impending crisis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on two case studies, but I'm just going to give you a brief overview of other things that are going on in the industry. And I could talk all day and bore your ears off on everything that our members are doing and other parts of the industry are doing, but I'll just pick on a couple that I think are very relevant to today. So first up, what's happened since COP26? Well, let's do a little brief on what happened at COP26. But there's just three things I wanted to pick up here. One on the importance of collaboration and some case studies on that, but also a little warning about the dangers of focusing on only one aspect of environment and the climate crisis that we just need to be a little bit mindful of. I mean, it's great that we have loads and loads of enthusiasm, people wanting to really get stuck into solving this rate, but we just need to be aware of there might be some unintended consequences if we focus just solely on carbon footprints. But I don't want to be a negative on that one. So let's get cracking. So I'm not going to bore you to tears with everything that industry is doing. I would just say, if you have time and you have your favorite web browser available, if you type in ABPI COP26, there is a website there which will take you a lot of case studies that our members have given us. I think they gave us about 100 odd, and we've just picked the choice ones to put on our website. And it shows the breadth of work that's going on here. So it's not just about reducing carbon footprint, but it's about reducing the amount of water use, about reducing the supply chain impact, the changing of packaging and manufacturing facilities using green chemistry techniques to maximize or make the most efficient processes available. Let's not forget that the industry is in the business of making medicines and putting patient safety first, because we operate under one of the most highest regulated environments out there. So, we absolutely need to put that patient safety first, but there's no reason why we can't then think about the environment second. So there are some really, really good examples there, and I won't walk you through them. You can do that at your leisure. I wanted to pick on the collaboration bit. So there are many things that pharma has in its own gift to do, and we're doing a lot of them. But there's others that is not just affecting the pharmaceutical industry, or we're not that much of an influencer in, where we all need to come together. And I think we saw that on the COVID front. There was lots of extraordinary collaborations going on, and there's lots of collaborations going on now. And one example I wanted to pick up was on the use of renewable energies. So you may have seen this announced at COP26 that 10 of the ABPI members had come together with an electricity provider for this unenergized project. So the idea here is that we lump together, we use our purchasing power to give our suppliers access to affordable renewable energies where they are available. And since COP26, another 2 ABPI members have come on board. And we kind of recognize that we use pretty much the same types of suppliers, or same suppliers, wherever they are globally, and the goal here is to give them all access so that everyone can share in this opportunity. But also, we recognize that this is a global issue, and we all need to come together globally to tackle that. Great that we're doing some national stuff as well, but this is a global problem, needs global solutions and global work. So that's an example. The point here is that right at the top of this one is, we all must win this race. There's no point one company leading and everyone else falling behind. We've got to look back, reach back, and give those ones who are not so far along the journey a helping hand to share those best practices and work together so that we all win. Because if one of us doesn't win, we all lose. So that's kind of one of the aspects I wanted to make a point of. And there are plenty other examples elsewhere in the world where similar things are going on. ABPI is putting out a report, so we commissioned someone to look at the state of play when it comes to pharma in the UK, and that report will be coming out during COP26. We're just sorting out the timing of that to make sure that people see it and we don't get distracted by some of the other things that are going on in the world that often take up newspaper headlines, etc. But it's key that that collaboration runs through all this report in terms of the recommendations for government, for NHS and for industry, certainly working together to really maximise the potential that we have here and accelerate some of the stuff that we're doing too. In terms of what industry is doing, I mean, you can take my word for it, but you don't have to, because there's now plenty of initiatives and publicly available information where our industry, they are submitting their homework and that homework is being marked. The Carbon Disclosure Plan, the CDP, is probably the most well-known of those, and you can access that and you can see the companies that have submitted their homework and the scoring they've got. They're graded just like exams, A to F, and they submit them on an annual basis, and many of our members are using CDP, and we know that the NHS England are using working with CDP to help them with some of their measures towards net zero NHS. There's also the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which many of our members have signed up to. So this is really making sure that it's evidence-based and science-based in terms of, you know, what we're actually doing and how we're progressing alongside that. And there's loads of others, and I won't go through all of them. But the exception of one that I want to pull out, which is the Sustainable Medicines Partnership. And you may not have come across that before. If you have, brilliant. If you haven't, you absolutely need to find out about them, because this is where lots of stakeholders are coming together under this SMP banner to work on true action-centered projects. So we're not talking about it, we're physically doing it. And I'm going to come up with a couple of examples in a minute. So what are we working on? This is where I want to spend most of the time. Now, we've mentioned inhalers and we mentioned recycling, and someone's asked the question, well, what about injector pens? Well, we've got a very good case study for you on that. And some of you may have come across Novo Nordisk. There are plenty of other ABPI members to choose from, but Novo, this is a particular example I wanted to highlight. No favoritism, but this was something they initiated in Denmark a few years ago, and that is going great guns. And they started a pilot last year in some regions in the UK, and that is now nationwide, and I mean all 4 devolved nations. So if you can see the thing here, they provide 23 million injectable devices, just Novo. And if all of those are taken back, that's 400 tons of plastic that could be taken out of landfill, taken out of other undesirable routes, and could be recycled. And they are recycling. They're turning them back into chairs and all manner of other things. So they're getting a second life. And they've kind of utilized their own existing logistics that gets their products to the pharmacists. They are using what they're terming reverse logistics. So the truck goes to the pharmacist, the truck comes back, doesn't come back empty, comes back with these used injector pens and anyone's brand injector pens, and turns them back into whatever that second life might be. It's more established in Denmark, and more companies are coming on board, and more companies are talking to Novo about doing the same in the UK. So, you know, this is kind of a good story where the pilot study has expanded nationally ahead of target because the uptake has been so good. There's been a real uptake on this. And there are other examples. I think you've mentioned inhalers. One of our members has an inhaler take-back scheme called Take Air in some regions, and looking to expand that too. And there's also, you're probably familiar with blister packs, and there's a TerraCycle process going on with a lot of community pharmacies and some of the bigger brands. And some individual members of the public as well are offering to be that kind of central point for collection and disposal, where those blister packs are being turned back into or are given that second life. They are separating out the aluminium from the plastic and turning them back into other things. And that is going very well, and other companies have come on board from that as well. Probably a little bit under the radar in some cases, but But that's fine. There's lots of pilot studies, and there's lots of different pilot studies for different products. What we really need is one system where it's brand agnostic, it's product agnostic, it's type agnostic, it's national scale, and it's economically viable. And how do we get from a pilot to a national scale? And that's the question that the ABPI and ABPI members have been asking since COP26, when they realized that there's a way, there could be a way here to scale this up and bring other stakeholders on board. Remember in that collaboration bit, there's things that are outside the remit of, or outside the gift of pharma. Bringing those other collaborators and stakeholders to come up with a truly national viable system, so that patients and public know exactly where to take their medicines packaging, and know they can trust that it will go back and be given a second life in some form or other. So we're starting on that, and we're talking to some of those people about a workshop towards the end of this year to kick that off. But this is the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, because this is a bit further advanced, and I'm actually at a meeting today. I'm going to workshop today that I'm going to go to in 10 minutes to kick this off. So we've already got those people willing to having expressions of interest, and we're now getting together in London today to start thrashing out a roadmap for electronic product information in the UK. Other countries have done this. Japan, probably one of the first, but other countries are coming aboard. Brazil were the most recent, and it's about time the UK got going with this as well. What does this mean? Well, people view product information in different ways. So some of it is already electronic. A lot of healthcare providers already access the summary of product characteristics electronically. But I suppose what has the biggest impact for this audience is the patient information leaflet. Now, a lot of you will be immediately going, hang on a minute, I need my paper. Don't worry. We want to be digital first, but we don't want to be digital only. We recognize that we cannot leave anyone behind on this journey. So whatever solution we come up with has to be designed with the public and the patient in mind, and have them involved in the evolution of this pretty much from day one. So we've got today's workshop, we do have the NHS and patient representation, but that will increase as the roadmap unfolds, and we have a much better idea of what is needed to be done. So that's kind of the one thing I wanted just to assure you of. And I kind of brought a prop, but you know what this prop is. You see these all the time. And this I borrowed this one off my mum. Don't worry, she's got another one. But these aren't necessarily fit for purpose. My mum has dementia, so she can read perfectly, but she'll read the first few lines of that and she'll just say, I've got a headache. Now, her main carer is my dad, blind as a bat, so and totally reliant on his iPad. So there's some people out there who maybe this might not necessarily be suitable for. But there might be others who don't even read it, and plenty of times when a medicine's package comes into a pharmacy, for example, and the first thing that happens is gets taken out and thrown away, and the patient doesn't see it in the first place. So there's we're almost creating a lot of stuff just to go straight into waste. And surely, if reduction is better than recycling, what can we do to reduce this? And that's kind of what we're trying to kind of look at. And we're working with the regulators on this as well, was to work out what is feasible. How can we maintain or even enhance patient safety using 21st century means without having any negative impact on that safety, but having a good impact in terms of speed, efficiency, the efficiency of updated information. That means to kind of give people alerts if anything has changed, but also there's a sustainability element in this as well. This took up 50% of the volume of the pack. So you can imagine if that was to go, then that's half the size of the pack, half the size of the packaging, half the number of packs or twice as many packs you can fit on a lorry, or maybe half as many lorry journeys. So the kind of side effects of this from a sustainability point of view are absolutely enormous, but only if we do this correct and we do this right, and we make sure that we do not leave anyone behind. So that's going on right now. And then there's a stat down there right at the bottom of that slide. The SMP have estimated about 100 billion leaflets printed worldwide, of which a significant portion do not reach its intended target, which is the public or the patient. So surely we can do better than that. That's my second case study. My last bit is really around best environmental outcome. And my caution here is, and I've used somebody else's metric, is the UN has 17 sustainability development goals for a reason. The carbon bit is only one of those. There are plenty of other contributors to the climate crisis, and reduction in biodiversity, the eutrophication of water. So eutrophication basically means maybe pesticides going into the water, or fertilizers going into the water. You have an imbalance in terms of the ecosystem in that water. You see green algae on the top, it chokes everything else. It basically reduces the biodiversity of the water. So there's other kind of measures as well. And we need to make sure that we don't become so obsessed with carbon zero that we drive other behaviors that actually have a negative consequence, such as large amounts of water use, when we're already worried about the amount of fresh water that's available. So we need to just have that balance. And what we're asking for here is that we consider a basket of environmental impacts when we're making any decisions. And we recognize that there might be a trade-off. You go for one, you might have a trade-off for another, and you've got to make that kind of call depending on where you are in that kind of ecosystem. We just need to remind people that there are other things out there. Carbon footprints are not the only game in town. And I'll give you an example, which is inhalers. So a lot of our members provide dry powders and other types. They also provide the MDIs. We've recognized this issue, and we're already working on to address this when it comes to the propellants. So there are new propellants in clinical trials already that, if those trials are successful, will be on the market in 4 or 5 years. That will mean that the carbon footprints of your MDIs will be pretty much on a parity with the other types of inhaler. So that's it, job done, yeah? But what about those other basket of issues? You've now then got to kind of look at, what are those other environmental factors when you make your decision? And I think we need to start thinking about that now, so that we've got something in place when those new products come online. So it has that effect on a lot of other medicine classes as well. So I just wanted to just flag that when you're asking your questions about carbon footprint, that you also consider the others. It is unfortunately more complicated than you might think, but we're absolutely committed to making it a lot simpler. So my last slide was about what next. So there are others, and you mentioned quite a few here. This thing about reduction. So prevention is better than cure, yeah? So there's a lot of work that we need to get into in terms of reducing overprescribing. I think in the report that I mentioned earlier, we interviewed someone from the NHS who estimated that 50% of medicines that are prescribed and dispensed are not used. So surely if we tackle that, we don't necessarily have to put so much effort into recycling that waste, because we reduce the size of that waste. And that's kind of where the industry want to try and work with all the actors in here to provide as much information as possible, so that the medicines that are prescribed and dispensed are used, and that the patients have a much greater confidence in what they're taking, why they're taking it, and are having those conversations with their GPs to be absolutely sure that they really do need to take it in the first place. So there's still a lot to be going on, and I'm sure a lot of you have got case studies where relatives or whatever are getting medicines that they just put away in a cupboard somewhere and don't necessarily use, and then you've got to take them back at some point. So we need to kind of reduce that as much as everything. So because of that, prevention is much better. Remember that the reduce is much higher up on that kind of process flow. So reduce, reuse, recycle, in that order for a reason. Let's work on the reduce a lot as well, please. And the other one is on clinical trials. And again, a lot of people might get involved in that. We know that there are some studies now going on within the NHS, and there's an NIHR project underway to look at the methodology around what makes a environmentally friendly clinical trial. So that is kind of phase one, where they're looking at the methodologies and the metrics, etc. We've asked to partner with them for phase two, which is, how do you come up with best practice when it comes to designing clinical trials? So build in sustainability right from the start. So we would like to develop with them a best practice guide for our members. Our members tend to be a lot of the sponsors of those clinical trials. So it truly is built in from day one, and makes the use of some of those innovations, etc., that came out through COVID, such as remote monitoring, such as electronic signatures for consent forms, etc. There's a whole lot more in there that I think we can do. So those are the two other things that we're working on, and hopefully I'll have some news for you in future years on the progress of those. With that, I will say thank you very much for your attention. I hope I have not bored you to death, and I'm more than happy to take questions, and by all means get in contact with me after the event.